Hi there, I'm Tony, the guy behind TonyTalksDev.com, and thank you for joining me on the second episode of the podcast. Today's guest is Kat Rivers, who's a tattoo artist, psychologist, and briefly, she was also a Clojure coder, so interesting topic today. We'll talk about how she got her first job and why she ended up getting the job in the first place, and how she ended up going back to tattooing after trying Clojure for a while. And we'll also talk about her perspective on learning TypeScript versus Clojure from the beginner's perspective and a lot of other topics, including burnout, career change, and imposter syndrome. So a lot of different topics today. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Let's get to it. Could you first introduce yourself to the audience?
Yes, of course. My name is Kat. I work as an entrepreneur and artist. I'm also a clinical psychologist, and for a brief period of my life, I was a coder.
Let's dive deep right into that. How did you end up trying coding, and what was behind that?
Oh my God. I want to say like quarter life crisis, but I was more like in my 30s. So, third way life crisis. I was having like a really hard time with burnout and trying to figure out what I could do with my life. To put it like in the most blunt way possible, I really wanted to have a job with like paid vacations and health insurance. And I know that seems like super shallow, but that was my goal.
And you were working as an entrepreneur, right, at the
I was working as an entrepreneur, so I was like I was working as a tattoo artist, like with my own studio, but I was also doing psychology at the same time, and I was just working crazy hours. And anybody who has ever done entrepreneurship knows that it's kind of like a ungrateful career path in a way. Like, it's fantastic in others, but the main thing is like you have to work a lot, and if you do want to take time off, you have to work even more before you take time off. So in your time off, you're just recovering from the burnout that you caused yourself to take time off. So I definitely fell into like a pretty bad cycle of just like overexerting myself. Yeah.
So how did the coding come into the picture? You wanted a job, but...
Yeah. So actually, I guess in part you. For those that don't know, this is my spouse. When we met many, many, many years ago, I remember that you tried to get me into React.
Yeah, I remember.
And so the first time, like, I tried this Code Academy, like, we're talking about like 7 years ago. And I did a few like HTML, CSS things, and that was fine, but I kind of like let it go. And then like 2 years after that, here in Finland, you kind of said like, why don't you learn React? And I was like, okay, fine. I was using this computer, which was a Linux computer, and I didn't know how to use anything terminal. I didn't know how to install things. I didn't know how to download like anything that had to do with coding. And you told me like, just try React, and I had a breakdown, an emotional breakdown. I was crying because I was so frustrated that I couldn't get anything to work. And so I just like left it at that, and I was like, no, this is not for me. Maybe I'm really, really dumb and I just cannot do it. And then fast forward many years later, then I'm in this like burnout with the art stuff, and I had an unfortunate event where that forced me to go back to my home country for a few weeks, and I went alone. And I don't know, like during my time alone over there, I basically only slept and played video games. I paid my mom to cook me meals. Like, I did nothing. But it was kind of like a reset. And in that moment, I started to feel like my brain kind of waking up. And I'm like, hey, actually, I think I might not be dumb. I'm so sorry. It sounds so silly. But it's like, you can hear, like, if you've ever been in burnout, and like burnout, like pure burnout, and you're like recovering from it, you can actually almost like hear the gears like waking up and like starting to move. And I'm like, I'm going to give it another try. And I actually thought about doing game design and more on the artistic side. But the more that my brain recovered, I felt like I could push myself to do more like the intellectual side of technology. And I was actually thinking of learning game development, but then I thought about it from a practical perspective. Because the game industry is very competitive and there are not that many spots, I decided to kind of go with web development more as a practical decision. And yeah, that's kind of like how it jump started. I know it's a bit weird, but that's how it jump started my career, I guess.
So you put the entrepreneurship on pause and then you did what?
So I guess I started like a lot of people start nowadays when they go on their own with Udemy or some kind of like master class on like some kind of like online boot camp for poor people, because obviously like real boot camps are really expensive. But it was really good, and it was actually like a JavaScript.
Do you still remember what that was?
I can't remember the name, but it is like JavaScript boot camp course by Cold Steel. I don't know, but I remember that the guy who's presenting has been like working at boot camps, like teaching other people to code in the US already for many, many years, and he likes chickens. So
The most important part.
the most important, his favorite are silky chickens. I I thought that was very memorable. And I signed up for some like not free classes, but like open university classes, so classes that you don't have to enroll into a study plan, like you can just take courses.
And you pay for it, right?
Yeah. And so I took 2 of those, and then I applied for a boot camp, which is not really a boot camp, but like let's call it a boot camp that was being organized by a company locally, working together with the government in one of these programs to kind of like jumpstart people who are unemployed, like to get them either to do a career change. Yeah, but it's not just for career changers, it's also for people that need that extra boost to get into the industry, because there were a lot of people who were coming from schools, like from like computer science like schools.
And they just couldn't get a job right after the school, so they went through that.
Or they didn't have like the practical experience, and they really needed like help to kind of get more like industry oriented skills.
So you got into one of those?
I did.
And that was about...
Well, I got into 2. So the first one was an introductory boot camp into web development, and it was like JavaScript and a little bit of React. And then I got into another one which was more exciting to me because not because of the tech stack, but because inside of it included a 3-month period like internship into a company. And I think like internships are like a really cool thing because it gives you the opportunity to work in a company, and it's really low risk for everybody, and high reward, potentially.
How long were these periods, these boot camps?
The first one was 3 months, and then the second one was 6 months, including the 3 months. So 3 months intense course and 3 months like internship in a company.
And if I remember correctly, you told me that the first one was about front-end development, and the next one introduced more the back-end stuff and also deploying services to Azure.
Yeah. So I guess like the first one, it did have a little bit of back end, but it was all kind of mushed together.
Okay.
And it was like very light amount. And the second one definitely was more sophisticated and more organized to keep like front end and back end separate, and like understanding like what goes into each part. I think at first it was a bit confusing and mushed up together because we did only use JavaScript, and then afterwards we only used TypeScript. So like when you use the same language, I guess like for me as a beginner, I was like, okay, I don't see the difference of what I'm doing. But like the difference obviously became clearer later on. But at the beginning, I was like, how do I know which one is which?
Yeah, I remember one case when you were were practicing some GET requests or something, and you had Axios GET, which is a front-end library, and then you had Express GET, which is a back-end handler.
Yeah.
And that took a while to...
Yeah, because I was so confused, because they use the same vocabulary and yet they're not doing the same thing, because one is actually getting or doing like a fetch, while the other one is just telling you that a get is occurring and that you need to listen, or you need to be aware that somebody is trying to get something from you, which is, I guess, a mental framework that's completely different, and you just have to kind of accept that the vocabulary sounds the same, but it's not the same. Especially when you are so literal like me, I'm like, why would you call both of them get? But whatever.
So you were learning JavaScript and TypeScript. How did Clojure come into the picture?
Oh, well, again, you introduced Clojure into my life even before I thought about doing a career change. I was accompanying you to meetups and helping you organize your own events and just watching videos with you.
Going to Metosim parties.
Yeah, going to Metosim parties and just listening to how you explained things. Even when I was just doing the JavaScript stuff, you would show me sometimes how you would do it with Clojure. And it was definitely quite interesting because it always looked simpler in a way. I don't know if simpler is the way, more elegant in a way, less round the way, less going around to get to the answer. You can say, if I give you an example, I want a soda, right? Mm-hmm. That would be the Clojure way. The JavaScript way would be I want the liquid that has the bubble and has had syrup introduced to it. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? It's more direct with Clojure in a sense.
I'm definitely going to use this later.
I don't know if that's the best example, but it comes to mind when you have to basically, or when you're learning a new language and you don't remember a word. Instead of saying, I need this thing, you say, that thing that you use to get to places, instead of saying the bus. It kind of feels like that. There's a direct way to do it, and that's Clojure. And then there are more dumb ways where you have to tell the program everything, hold its hand and say, come on, Jimmy, we're taking a walk.
Yeah, I can understand this analogy. It works quite nicely. So you started thinking about Clojure towards the end of your boot camps, and what happened next?
No, it wasn't even towards the end of my boot camp. Clojure was just kind of a part of our lives at that point. But
a third family member.
A third family member, that's true. But when it came to getting an internship for the boot camp, that's where kind of the school that I was studying at, the company where I was studying at, they really did not deliver on that front. So they were not really getting internship places for everybody successfully.
So you needed to find your own spot.
Yeah, I'm not gonna sit around and just be oh, boo-hoo, poor me, I didn't get an internship. I'm okay, I'm gonna do this thing that I really hate, which is networking. So even throughout the boot camp, I went to every networking activity that I could find, and I talked to everybody, and I even cold contacted people on LinkedIn. And that's actually how I got the internship, because somebody that I contacted apparently was kind of popular in this area, and they posted my post, they reposted my post looking for an internship. And that's how the company where I did do my internship found me, because they're hey, I saw that you're interested in this, and I remember something blah 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 about Clojure, you being interested in Clojure. And they were interested in working in Clojure, very new company. And I'm wow, that's so scary, but sure.
Let's give it
Why
a go.
not? Very Delulu.
And you were 9 months into your development career doing JavaScript.
At that point, I was 11 months, yes. 11 months into having done like my last day of tattooing until I got an internship, it was 11 months. What a ride.
And this internship was Clojure and JavaScript both, basically, right?
Well, yes and no. I mean, yes, because like when we were doing some kind of like proof of concept, because we were like trying out different technologies, to kind of like, because they were thinking about, I can't really give all the details, but they were like thinking about a particular like service or product in the future and kind of like how to package it. So one of the things that we used was Svelte, to see like how it would work with a Clojure backend and a more like complex like e-commerce solution. And so I did use JavaScript for that, but I mostly worked in Clojure.
How did you like Svelte after React?
After React, I liked Svelte a lot. I don't 100% know how it would do with more complicated technical needs. But if you're comfortable just using it as like your everything, like for your like full stack, and you don't need anything too sophisticated, you can build things really quickly. And I don't know, it deals also with states a lot better than React. It gets a lot less messy.
Can you give me an example?
Oh my
I've
God,
never tried
no. I cannot. I don't know how to explain. You know, like how in React you can have states basically everywhere.
In every component.
In every freaking component. And the way that Svelte deals with it is with stores. And so you can have your stores just in one place, and then just use your stores.
Okay.
I don't know how to explain it beyond that. It just like, you don't have to go into every component to try to find what's happening. You just go to your stores and see, oh, okay.
You mentioned that Svelte would be good if you use it as a full stack application, but you did not use it as full stack, if I
No, I did
understood
not.
correctly.
No. The way that we did it, I think, was a little bit too convoluted, and I don't think it was the ideal solution.
But you were still just trying things out.
Yeah, we were just trying things out. Yeah.
So
Yeah, because we were trying to use Clojure in the backend kind of like a gateway, because the service would require to connect to multiple backends of like other external like services. Mm-hmm. So like, for example, cart services, search services, PIM services, anything related to inventory or e-commerce or whatever. So we were going to use Clojure kind of like a gateway between that and the front end. But we used Svelte to try it out because it just seemed quite popular. We wanted to check it out. But Svelte already has a way to deal kind of with a lot of API calls in it, so it felt a lot of times quite redundant.
Like, why would you have another backend?
Yeah, exactly. The only thing I can say is that it increased like security.
Okay.
So I guess there is that benefit as well. But I think I'm too much of a noob to really understand the depths of like, would it have been like an efficient, probably not efficient, but like, was it like a good thing to pursue or continue pursuing or not?
Yeah, but anyway, you were coding Svelte and Clojure side by side after 11 months in your coding career.
Yes.
What happened after the internship?
I got hired. Amazing. I got a job. They wanted me.
And what happened then?
Well,
you started working as an engineer?
Yeah, so like up to that point during the internship, I was working on internal projects and like the proof of concept, and then...
Or you were still working with Svelte at that point?
No, maybe like a week into it, but then right when I got hired, I started working on a client project that it was seemingly, when it had been pitched to me, it was a lot, like it sounded a lot simpler than what it was like ended up being. So the clients kind of surprised us all with all these requirements that we had no idea were going to be so complex. It was a very complicated project.
Welcome to software.
It was no, yeah, but this was I think like if you really have to like roll, like if you play D&D and you have to roll the die, and you know you have to roll a 20 to like for excellence or whatever, or more than 15, I rolled a 1. This project was, we rolled a 1. The cake was a lie. That's another reference. The project was very interesting, and I was like able to start, but it was very frustrating because I think like the human interaction part was very difficult. Of course, me as a beginner, I did not have confidence to even talk to the clients because, first of all, when I'm nervous, I like lose all vocabulary. I'll start saying things like the thingy or the thing or that thing, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm saying anymore. And sometimes I felt like so lost, I didn't really even have a question. Like, I was like in the ocean and all I could see is water, and I didn't even know where to, like, what direction I was supposed to like swim towards.
From your psychologist background, like how would you suggest people deal with this kind of situations now that you've experienced that once yourself?
I mean, honestly, like, maybe like from psychology's perspective, I'm thinking more like organizationally, like, because I like to basically equate all relationships, like work relationships, personal or whatever, to kind of like systems or family dynamics, similar to family dynamics. And I think that there should be at least somebody who is checking in to make sure how everybody is doing, and kind of like taking care of their, like, how do I say, like taking care of their interests, like being like considering like their interests, like, oh, this person is very new, they probably don't know this, so like let me check in, not just like if they need help on the technical part, but like what is happening like emotionally, what is happening like communication wise, like what is really happening in the team.
Just reach out and connect, basically.
Yeah, basically I think definitely that could help. But I know that it's nothing new. I already knew going into it that it's quite like a common stereotype that tech people are very bad at communication and they're not very good at like connecting with others, and empathy is impaired. So I think we all did the best that we could with what we had, but definitely there was room for improvement. Even on my behalf, like I think I could have reached out earlier, but I also deal like with my own insecurities of like not wanting to come off as the dumbest person in the room.
I've definitely been there as well.
Yeah, and also like when it came to communicating directly with the clients, I was terrified of disappointing my boss. I like disappointing my company, my team, like leaving some kind of bad impression, which would also affect them. You know, like the Mulan movie. I wanted to bring pride to the family, and I did not want to bring shame to my family. You know? I don't know how to explain it, but like, yeah. I didn't want to be the reason why people would think that the company is doing bad. Yeah. And it sounds catastrophizing, but that's how I felt.
Taking this a step further, like, do you think that having coach or mentor that is a bit more involved through all this process would make it easier?
I guess that's going to depend on the coach and the mentor. It could potentially be very helpful. I think there should at the very least be a people leads person whose job is specifically related to making sure like that the people are peopling without dying.
Yeah. I've noticed that if you have more junior people on the team, that you can actually see these things happening even though they might not be telling you that it's happening. So it often helps to voice out those things for them to make them feel it's okay to actually say these things aloud. They are not alone in the situation.
Yeah. Yeah. That is true.
So not just a technical mentor, but more like a coaching through the industry as itself. And
oh yeah, that definitely I think would be like super helpful, especially like for, I mean, for anybody really, not just juniors, because like you can become quite technically proficient and still not really develop those like, I don't want to say skills, but it's more like an understanding of how to thrive in that type of environment instead of just surviving, because you can be like the best person technically, but if you don't have like those internal, like, I don't want to say skills, but like that
Instincts.
internal like understanding or strength or like maybe like caparazón, like shell that will protect you from getting yourself hurt in those situations, because it's very easy to take things personally. It's very easy to feel like I am the broken weak link here. I don't know if you've ever felt like that, but it's definitely something that I've noticed, not just from me, but just from other people as well that are more senior than me as well.
Yeah,
for sure.
Imposter syndrome is strong.
It is. It is.
Let's go to a bit lighter topics.
Yeah.
TypeScript versus Clojure.
Oh my God.
From the perspective of a newbie, like how is it learning these languages?
Okay, I'm gonna say this. And I hope, please don't come for me. TypeScript is horrible. It's okay, it's not horrible, but it just makes, okay, because JavaScript, see, the thing is that JavaScript is really easy to use. It's really easy to mess up. And TypeScript comes and tries to like help you a little bit with that, but then it makes it so much more verbose and annoying.
Okay.
And then it just screams at you all the time. So it kind of like lets you, I don't know how to explain, like it lets you move forward. Not as much as JavaScript, but it still lets you move forward, and then it just yells at you. In a way.
Have you tried Rust?
No. I don't want to. I've seen it. Like I've seen other people doing it, and it just looks horrible. It looks terrible.
How about Clojure?
Clojure. Clojure definitely has like a steep learning curve.
Is it because of all the abstraction that it has, the functional programming paradigms?
It's like, it is so efficient and it's so specific that I think it just takes time. And it also, it takes time to learn like the vocabulary of Clojure, because Clojure has very specific things that you can do with it. And it doesn't really super like it when you use it as if it were JavaScript, you know, like going around things. Like, to make Clojure look good, the Clojure way, like you do need to learn like the Clojure vocabulary, as in like what functions they have and whatever, at least from like the core libraries. And it takes time. Reading the documentation is kind of hard. There is not that much there's not that much online that you can refer to for different solutions. So like, of course, like JavaScript has been around and so many people use it that there is like so much, but there's also so much garbage. I mean, there's so much useful stuff, but there's also so much garbage. But it also has the benefit that there's a lot more beginner-friendly material.
That's true.
Clojure does not have beginner-friendly material. It is not beginner-friendly. You need to socialize. And as I said before, it's not my favorite thing, but it like, Clojure really forces you to be in contact with people and like ask help from other Clojurians. Probably good. I'm not a super big fan, but it's probably good to do that. It definitely introduces people into the community, which I think is a good thing, because like the hardest thing is always getting into a new community, right?
It is.
And JavaScript is so big, and it's already quite divided. Like it's very like polarized, and Clojure is a very, I don't want to say tight knit, but the community is a lot nicer. People are super nice and they're super helpful, friendly, big nerds. Nice nerds, mostly. Big nerds. The documentation looks like it. It's hard to read if you're a noob. It's not the easiest.
Yeah, that was probably the worst part of Clojure for me as well when I started learning it, that the materials were not, that there was not too much materials to learn from. And
Yeah.
then you needed to go and read the source code and compare it to the TypeScript ecosystem.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting because every time that I found like something that I could use in Clojure and I wanted to understand how it was working or like what it was doing, I would read the description or any doc that was available. It tended to be quite short, and I was always at the end of the phrase like, what did I just read? This made no sense. Like, it's kind of like a description that forces you to go down like 10 different definition routes to understand just that one. So it was definitely a challenge, but luckily I had you to explain it to me sometimes.
So what would you say to Clojure developers who are developing these tools to make the entry easier for new people?
Okay, if we think about like the world is progressing in a way where everybody is a lot more technologically savvy, and kids are starting to code in school and like get more acquainted with technologies at an earlier age. Think about like a kid who is 15 trying to learn Clojure, because we are going to get to that point if we want Clojure to survive, if we want it to be like one of the big languages in the future, and which I think it should be because it's so nice in so many ways, but it needs to be friendlier. The communication needs to be more accessible.
Yeah.
You shouldn't need a PhD in math to understand what's happening.
That is true. As you mentioned earlier, you were a coder for a while. Would you like to explain what happened and why you are not a coder anymore?
Well, the simple answer, Tony, is I quit. I quit. The art muse was calling my name too strongly. That is the short answer. The long answer is, if you've ever exercised, you know there's this such a thing called active rest, which is where you rest by like walking or doing something, but not by like sitting down and stopping. So you continue moving. This process of me like going into coding, like, of course at the moment I didn't know it, but like looking back, feels like it might have been an active rest. Like, I needed a break from everything that I was doing, and I needed something different, and I needed to like take a breather because it was like so overwhelming. And a crazy person's thought that coding would be less overwhelming for some reason. I don't know. But I just was thinking a lot about doing art, and I was not feeling super happy. I'm also like unmedicated ADHDer. Working full time for somebody else like was actually like one of the most stressful things, is like knowing that I cannot actually concentrate even for 4 hours. Like, it's really difficult. So yeah, I quit after I almost had like some kind of another emotional breakdown from that.
And what do you do now?
I went back to tattooing.
Shameless plug here.
Yes. So, like, if you're in the area of Oulu or Helsinki or something, you know where to find me. I tattoo, yeah.
Where to find you online?
Oh, yeah, sorry. So on Instagram, you can find me at cat.rivers.tattoo. That's my tag on Instagram. And soon you will also be able to find me on my art website called duckingart.com.
Ducking art.
Ducking art, yes.
With duck in it.
Yes, with duck in it. This is PG website. It's friendly, family friendly. And we make ducking art. Yeah.
Anything else to close up the conversation?
Try Clojure. It's super cool. I don't know.
Yeah, Clojure is super cool. It's
It is
also
super cool.
difficult if you are not into computing, but it's possible, as you proven that.
I think like at the beginning it can be very difficult because it is very unnatural way of doing things. Also, the setup is not super easy. Or not as easy as other things. It does, on the positive side, force you to read more documentation. It also forces you to think about solutions, which I think is not too bad because I am a big supporter of making your brain work sometimes. You know, it's good for you not to be handed the answers every time. So yeah, I don't know. Clojure is pretty cool. I don't regret it at all.
At least you understand me better now.
I do understand you better, and I didn't do it for too long, but I did it. The project that I did was complicated enough that I could see the difference between if I had done it in TypeScript, it would have been a nightmare, a verbose nightmare. In some ways. In other ways, I think I could have found other solutions faster just because there is more material online for other languages. Maybe not all of them, but like the more popular ones, I guess.
Cool. I think that's a wrap. Thank you for joining me here today, and bye-bye.
Thanks for having me. Bye. Thank you for listening. If you liked this podcast, please consider subscribing so you don't miss out on the next episodes.